Questions for reflection. In our first reading, we are given the account of King David on his deathbed. He's addressing his son Solomon concerning the way in which he should live his life in service to the Lord as king. He also instructs Solomon about his sons and how they should live. What is clear is the connection between the faith one professes and the way that one lives their lives. David, as he faced death, had learned that lesson the hard way. He had done great things for the Lord, but he had also sinned greatly. He knows the promise of the Lord to ensure that his dynasty will endure is dependent upon the fidelity of his successors. Now we know as Christians that the Lord fulfilled his covenant to David, ultimately by sending his only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, whom the gospel tells us in his humanity was of the lineage of David. St. Matthew's gospel account traces the genealogy of Jesus back to both Abraham and David. Thus the covenants are fulfilled and perfected in him. There's a connection between the faith we profess and the way we live our lives as well. But as Christians, we now have, through Jesus Christ, the Son of David and the Son of God, access to forgiveness and a continued access to grace through the sacraments of his church. The sacrament of penance or confession is a tremendous gift. If you have not utilized it lately, make today the day. Let us choose today to walk in the way of living faith, in both our words and in our deeds. Our responsorial psalm is taken from the first book of Chronicles. Though it's not a psalm of David, we are reciting David's words. David had just instructed his son Solomon on how to proceed to build the temple. He would not be allowed to build the temple himself. This passage is taken from a prayer of praise David offers in the midst of an assembly of worship over which he's presiding. David's prayers are always filled with praise and worship. That was and still is part of his enduring legacy in the loving plan of God for salvation. Do we spend time daily praising and worshiping God? In the portion of the Gospel of St. Mark, which we hear proclaimed at Holy Mass today, Jesus summons the 12 whom he had chosen, and he sends them out 2 by 2. He gives them his authority to combat and overcome evil, to heal the sick, and proclaim the gospel. And that mission continues today. Through the waters of baptism, we were first forgiven of original sin and incorporated into his mystical body, the church. We are all called to go forth, to preach the gospel, to exercise his authority. Every single baptized Christian is called to participate in the ongoing redemptive mission of the Lord. We're living in a trying time for the church in the known world of our day. It will become even more difficult in the days ahead. Remember these words from the Gospel of St. John, and I quote, "And this is the judgment, that the light has come into the world, and men love darkness rather than light because their deeds were evil." That's John 3:19. Much like the early Christians, we face a similar hostility and opposition which grows more intense. And this is precisely the kind of historic period which 2,000 years of Christian history has shown us produces heroes and saints and sometimes martyrs. But we must say yes to the invitation of Jesus and follow his instructions. They come to us in his word and through the teaching office of his church.